When I was in secondary school, I wrote a story about how I wanted to kill all of the popular kids.
Nice.
I was really angry. I was full of anger.
I want to read that. Have you still got it?
No outlet. No, I don't still have it.
No.
Because what happened is my best friend took the story and put it in the back of a homework diary, and then one of the popular kids found it,
Nice.
and then the popular kids got hold of it, and then I was just hated for the rest of my school life for writing that story, although I denied the whole time that I had written it.
Well, it's good that you all knew where you stood. You know, it's good. Get it out in the open. It's better. You just didn't have to pretend.
Yeah. So there's a story about a story.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, I like revenge stories. Fun. So how did you kill them?
It was pretty graphic,
Go
I
on.
think. I can't remember, but I
Okay.
was really into like like torture porn movies were really popular at that time, like Saw and like Hostel, and I loved horror movies. So I think there was just a lot of like torture
Yeah. Get any
and
details?
like gore.
Anything at all? Like any...
Probably like chopping off parts,
Okay,
body
yeah.
parts.
Valid, yeah. And any like penis extraction or any like pulling out eyeballs or I don't know, what's horrible? Like suffocating them with their own anus or something. I don't know. Just spitballing.
Yeah, I can't really remember the deets.
Okay. But it sounds juicy anyway. Full of the right energy.
It felt good to write it.
Cool. Nice one. Yeah, I think like when I was in school, I wrote the only I think the only class I ever enjoyed in the whole experience of school was when I was in the first year of high school, I think, and the English teacher creative writing, and they let us do what we wanted. They were just like, write something. It can be anything you want. And I was really into like George Romero at the time, and like The Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and stuff. And this was like before it was popular, because it's everyone knows what that is now, like zombie movies. But at that time, when I was at school, no one knew what that was. Like it was still really, really underground thing. My mum got me into it. Actually, she recorded those sort of films for me at night, and then she'd like introduce me to them. She was like a film person. And I'm still inspired by that sort of thing today, to be honest, because it's just so like student filmmaking. It's like just anyone can do it. It's just great. It's just inspiring. I mean, they're not even really that great movies or anything, but I just do get a lot from them. I think it's just nostalgia, maybe. But so yeah, I wrote a zombie story, and I stayed. I remember I stayed like the class broke for lunch, and I wanted to stay to finish it, you know. And I just sat through my lunch hour writing, just constantly. It's the only time I ever remember like enjoying school.
Well, that's a great lesson. Just write what you want.
Yeah.
It can be anything. That's amazing.
Yeah.
There should be more of that
Yeah,
in school.
exactly.
Because normally they're, telling you what to think, telling you what to do.
Yeah, boring.
Telling you how to write. That's why I did so shit in school, because it's just like, you're just sort of trying to please
Oh, it's
the
bullshit.
teachers or, whoever's marking the exams, and you're having to write in a particular way that has nothing to do with who you are, inside. And it's just so restrictive. But
Yeah.
just you're free to write whatever you want is great.
Yeah, it was fun.
Maybe
Yeah.
I would have learned how to write stories if that had been the brief, for lessons. Because I think when you are just free to do it the way you want to do it, then eventually you find your way to like how to do it.
Yeah, it's the only way I can be interested is if I do what I'm interested in. That's why I was so terrible at school. One of the reasons. I hated authority as well. But, I mean, there were a bunch of reasons, but yeah, I I just hated it. I hated every minute of every day of every week of every month of every year. It just felt like it went on forever. It's like prison to me. But yeah, that one day I do remember. I haven't thought about that for a while actually. It's a good day. But yeah, I never really got to the ending. Like I just, you know, I never finished it in 2 hours. I mean, I wrote through the lunch hour and then handed it in. You know, I mean, I could have spent way longer on it, but the teacher seemed to be happy that I'd done that, and they gave me a good mark, which never used to happen. Trust me. So I didn't really learn anything, but I had a good time. You know, like it's not like the teacher was like, "Oh, you can expand this part," and "Oh, this is good," and "This is cliche," and like, I never got any feedback or anything. She just like marked it. She just gave me a good mark. She just said, "Well done."
That's very Natalie Goldberg, because her whole thing is, you know, you set a timer for however long, 20 minutes, for example, and you sit down and you just write. And if you're doing that in a group of people, you know, you all read aloud what you've written at the end of the session, but there's no criticism, no judgment, no opinions. It's just reading aloud, listening. And then at the end, she might do a recall where she says to everyone, you know, what do you remember? What can you recall? Like, what stood out to you? So you can hear, like, which parts stood out.
From other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, you want that, I think. Yeah.
But even just, you know, the act of reading your work aloud is really powerful.
Nice one.
And you can learn just from doing that, just from hearing it.
I wouldn't have wanted to do that in school because they're all dicks. All the people in my class, basically. Bullies and...
Yeah, that would have been horrible.
Yeah.
But
you need a safe space.
yeah, if it's safe. And if everyone's kind of doing it, you know, everyone's being vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just not school, is it? Everyone's got their defence up because it's war.
So you said that you didn't write the ending.
No, I don't think I did write endings ever, really. Like, I think maybe that's quite a common thing to when you're starting or whatever. Is like you don't really know. Like I used to have like good ideas for starting things. Like I could envision. I think this might be common because I know people who have had this as well. It might not be. I don't know. But like I would think about the start, and I did really thought about film a lot when I was a kid and music, and I had a crappy video camera that my mum got me one year, and I spent like a few years with that, and I'd make like little films and stuff on it, and I'd never know where they would go. Like I'd have an idea for the start, and I think I even started a zombie film, like with myself, just me and a camera sort of thing. But it was more about learning, and I suppose I would start something and then, I'd learn some things. So yeah, it was just a beginning. But maybe that's what I would have done. It's just a beginning. Maybe you don't need a middle or an end necessarily. It can just be something else. I mean, I think I have got that with my filmmaking now, having revamped that passion and making my own videos to my music. It's like there is a beginning and middle and end, but I think there's a beginning, middle and end in everything. Like that's something that I've learned through the process and also through watching things. But doing, I think, when I was, the last few years starting to make films from my music, on YouTube. I put them up on YouTube, they're just sort of things that I do for fun really. But, I realised that because I think you learn from watching, constantly watching films and TV and things that are really great, and then analysing them and thinking about them, obsessing about them in my mind, and and then doing it, and then you do it, right? The best way to learn, you go and do it, you make something. And I realised that there is a beginning, middle, and an end to everything. And that was kind of last few years I realised that. So even with a shot of something, there's a beginning of the shot. There's the contents that happens in that shot, and then there's an ending to that shot. And because I think our brains work through like beginning, middle, and end. Like it's like the monomyth. And that
cycles, isn't it?
Right.
We're constantly in cycles.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Hero with 1,000 Faces, the monomyth, Joseph Campbell, and also spiritual work like self-development work, death and rebirth. So you know, the cycle of the planets, the night and day. You know, it's daytime now, you know, morning, and then it'll be afternoon, then it'll be evening, and then it'll be nighttime, and we'll go round and round and round. You know, it's Tuesday now, it'll be Wednesday tomorrow. So it's like this formula is like permeates everything. And so I realized that when I was making, you know, one example is like a shot. So you might start from one place and then move to another place, have something happen, and then move back. The camera moves back before it. So there's like a beginning, middle, and end to everything. Also, what the dialogue, right? So if you watch scenes that are well written in film, it's like the dialogue starts. So someone will say something like, "Oh, it's such a beautiful day today," and then they'll talk about what the meat of the scene is, and then they'll go, "Oh, but I'm so glad it's a really nice day today," and then that'll be the end of the scene. So it's like one really fucking chunky piece of delicious information for me was that, like, the beginning is the end. That just sort of changed everything for me. It's like, and you know, you helped me with that quite a lot, I think. Like, it's the idea of like with the hero's journey, right? The hero sets off and is, you know, a person with this experience and this life, and then they go off on this journey and they change and they come back, but then they're in the same place, but they're different. It's like the ending is the beginning, like the Buddha, you know, goes out. There's a saying for enlightenment, which is, before enlightenment, I fetched water and chopped wood. After enlightenment, I fetched water and I chopped wood. So it's like, there you go. There's the beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is the life, the simple life. You go out on the journey, you change, and you come back, and then you do the simple life again. It's like that pattern has just been kind of an amazing thing for me to know in my own work.
We'd really love it if you could help us to grow the podcast and grow the community. So if there's anyone you have in your life who you think might enjoy Pivotal Slice, please do recommend. It goes a long way.
It does, and you can subscribe to our Patreon for as little as £3. You can also pay a bit more and get exclusive episodes and juicy content.
Or if you fancy buying us a coffee, that would help us a lot to keep growing and give us a little energy boost.
You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, Audible. You can rate us on Spotify, and you can engage us on YouTube by liking, commenting, and subscribing. This will go a long way in moving through the algorithm universe.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, because like you said, it's in everything, isn't it? It's in the way we perceive time and the days, you know, as they pass and everything, and it's also in our bodies, like the cycles that our body goes through in a day. You know, I was reading about stress cycles and the reason that you might struggle to get to sleep at night, you know, as soon as you lie down in bed, that's when your brain starts activating and you can feel the stress in your body. I was feeling it last night, actually, as I was trying to fall asleep. It's because the stress cycle hasn't resolved. You know, you haven't rested throughout the day enough, and so those cycles haven't been given the chance to find a resolve. And so as soon as you lie down, your body's like, right, come on then, let's resolve this stress, because we need to do that before we can get into the rest state, the parasympathetic state that we need to sleep fully. So it's interesting that stories mirror that, you know, needing that resolve in a story, the way that our body needs resolve. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because it's just like a microcosm, macrocosm, or it's just like a mirror. It's just a strange loop, something going around and around and around. It's us, isn't it? We're the strange thing going around and around and around, beginning, middle, and end. Forever. And so it makes sense that everything that we project outwardly would be that.
I think the most frustrating thing for me about learning how to write stories was not learning that, what we've just been talking about, not learning about resolve and the importance of that in the shape of the story. Because all of the courses that I ever took about writing, or like the way I learned it in school, was really just learning how to start, how to build the character and how to set the scene, and how to do that opening shot that you were talking about. But the importance of balancing that with the resolve was just never really emphasized to me. And so I just, went through so many years of strain and mistakes, with regards to endings. It's just like one of the hardest things for me to learn was figuring out how to end things. And I see that in a lot of stories, in a lot of like books that I read. The ending just is sort of left loose, or that there's just no sense of resolve. And I'm not saying that endings have to be happy and like neatly tied up.
They don't even have to resolve.
No, I mean, I love ambiguity at the end of a story. But even ambiguity is a kind of resolve, I think, with a conscious choice that the storyteller has made to end on that note and leave the reader with that, or the audience with that.
A resolution of no resolution.
Yeah, exactly. That is a choice as well. And I love that choice. I love it when that's done.
It's usually better, I think, and more confident when someone chooses that. Because, it's so often done so badly, isn't it?
Or in a way that feels forced. Or I find, in a book that I read recently, like something really traumatic was just like dropped in near the end as a way to sort of build to a climax, just like, or not even necessarily a climax, just to get to kind of the lowest point of the character. And then you just introduce this like really horrible traumatic scene right near the end because you think that's some kind of resolution, but you're just not. It's not very respectful to the reader, because then the reader is just left with that. The reader is left holding the trauma. And this is something that I find in a lot of the stories that I, read and edit for the journal is leaving the reader with trauma. Because the trauma hasn't been worked through or resolved in the story, because it maybe hasn't been resolved in the person, and so the writer is just sort of passing on that unresolved trauma onto you, and just leaving you with like all kinds of horrible feelings, and it's difficult.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is. It's rare that you find that people are able to like understand where to go. I guess just in life, isn't it? Like, where do you go? I got this idea, but where do I go with it? You could get really excited about it, and then they just kind of, I think, maybe just rush the end. They're just like, oh, okay, we'll just.
Well, I think when you get that seed of inspiration, you get a massive burst of energy, don't you? And it's like you're in love with the idea, and you're in love with the setup, and you pour all this energy into starting, which is great, because starting can be hard as well, and a lot of people get blocked before they even get to that point. So you kind of ride this wave of big, inspiring energy to get into the story, and then, it takes time and patience, and that energy isn't always sustained, and so by the end you're sort of just, I don't know, it's a very small percentage of that energy is left, and then you're just using that to kind of like stick an ending on that isn't fully considered. I mean, that's definitely what happened with my first novel, where the ending was literally just like so tacked on and like half baked, because I just zapped all of the energy that I had for that story, and I was so sick of the story by that point because I've been working on it for years. But yeah,
I think it's a formula. Once you work out the formula, it's kind of easy, but you do have to like know. You have to kind of realize the formula. Like for me, I spent like 10 years or something writing and not really being able to make good endings. Maybe once in a while I would just fluke it and it would just happen unconsciously and I'd get something that made sense, but a lot of the time I would like really struggle. And I think it's just a lot of years of trying to like work it out. I don't know whether the information's out there to like really understand like how to write music, although there is like so much information out there about it, but none of it that I've ever read or done courses or etc whatever has ever really addressed it in a way that I wanted it to be addressed. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to be able to talk about it in like a real simple way, like because I do want to like really convey what it is, and it and it is different for different people, but I think like there is a moral responsibility to an extent, and I think that we need to like take responsibility for our actions in life, and we need to be able to like know that we aren't perfect and that we aren't like good people or bad people. We're a mixture. We're a universe of possibilities, but I do think that we do need to take responsibility like for our lives and our actions and the things that happen in the world, even if we're not even directly responsible for it. I mean, you hear so much about people making excuses like, oh, it's not me. I mean, I can't tell you how much I get that from people. It really winds me up. I got in touch with someone recently about a website. They put my name wrong on it, and they credited me wrong, and it went off. It was wrongly linked, and I got in touch with the person who created the website and explained, that this wrong information, misleading information. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm really." Someone else took over for me, and I wasn't involved in any of that. I don't work for them anymore. So I would just get in touch with the company, and I hope that helps. Right? It's like you want all the credit for like doing none of the responsible, like taking the responsibility and doing the work. It's like, you need to take responsibility even if you didn't do it. Like, it's like just take responsibility for it. Take some fucking responsibility for things, because if it's all out of your hands, then like sure, like the world's corrupt and people are like crapping over each other, and like it's a war zone of fucking human conflict, right? And sure, the world's a crappy place at times, but like you don't have to add to it, like take some responsibility. And I think like that's one of the major problems with modern stories, whether it be music, and we're talking about music here as well as like fucking like films and writing and novels and art and everything is a story. Like painting's a story, so sculpture's a story, everything is stories, really. We live in a universe full of stories. I can't remember. I've read a quote, I might have said it on before, but like the universe isn't made of atoms, it's made of stories. So the responsibility thing, and it's so rare to get that. So for example, in a story, in a film or a TV show, if the character's done something that is kind of immoral and causes pain and suffering, they need to face consequences. Like it's so important to send that message, because otherwise we just think that like it's okay to be a drug dealer and like to murder people and like just abandon your family and like and we're gonna let that person get away with that. And it's so rare that there is any responsibility taken, and I think like symbolically that's very damaging for the psyche of people who are interacting with it. Like it's so rare that you get an ending, like one ending. One of the few endings that I think takes responsibility is like that comes to mind is like Wall Street.
Oh yeah.
Because at the end of the film, he goes to prison willingly. And his dad's like, this is a terrible thing. You've been through a terrible thing, but, this might be good for you. Now, I don't know whether prison is good. But, like, you need to come to some fucking resolve. And, Oliver Stone is one of the few directors that does take responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just processing that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, I love the ending to Twin Peaks: The Return, because the ending happens over 2 episodes. You have the first episode that is sort of like the more conventional ending, where all of the storylines that have been set up throughout the series are brought to a close in a satisfying way. The evil is defeated. There's a kind of battle, climactic battle, and everything comes together. And then you have this second ending. I mean, it's kind of like you've got the Mark Frost ending, who's the writer, to start with, and then you've got the Lynch ending as the second part. And it's just this sort of weird, ambiguous story where the characters go into this sort of, I don't know, parallel universe where they have different names but they look the same. And I don't know, I can't even really describe what's happening.
Yeah, there's loads of this driving.
Episode.
They drive
They're
for
just
ages.
driving
It's really great.
for most of the episode, and it's very quiet for most of the episode. And after the sort of loud, explodey climax episode, you've then just got this very quiet meditation where you're just with these 2 characters that the whole show has been based around up until that point, and they're brought together, and these 2 characters never met in the original series, and so you've just got this whole episode where they're just in a car together, and it's kind of, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really, I really love that.
And then they get to the place where they've been aiming for. They get to the house that they've been
They go back to the
searching
beginning.
for. They go back to the beginning, back to the Palmer house. But it's not the house. And it's just this weird moment of like, wait, where are we? What's happening?
Yeah. Are we where we thought we were, or are we somewhere else?
Yeah, it's just a masterclass in how to do ambiguity, I think, as an ending.
Definitely, and I think, that's a really good example. Yeah. Yeah, I think if you don't know, then it's okay not to know, but, like, don't try and pretend like you do know.
Yeah, I think I've heard different opinions on that.
Right.
Some authors who start a story knowing how it's going to end, and some who don't, and, obviously there's no right or wrong way. I mean, on the episode with Inez, I was talking to her about endings, and she knows how it's going to end, and she gets her endings from dreams. She'll dream the ending and then kind of engineer the story towards that ending, that image that's in her head. And that's a really interesting way to do it. And I've heard other writers say that they're just kind of making it up as they go along, and they have no idea how it's going to end. I used to be that way, and I found that quite stressful and a strain to not know. For me, it doesn't lead to a good place if I have no idea where it's going, and it's more likely that I'll sort of fuck it up at the end. I find that it's more helpful now to think of what feeling I want to end on, like what feeling I want to leave the reader with. And it's kind of a big shift that's happened in me over the last year, actually, following the really difficult kind of breakdown that I had last year. Right at the end of that breakdown, as I was, I'd taken a bunch of time off work to kind of recover, and I read Audre Lorde's memoir. Well, it's kind of a memoir, semi-fictional memoir, It's called Zami, a new spelling of my name. And it just kind of resolved something in me. And because Audre Lorde was just so connected to her body and like her feelings, and reading her work is like a somatic experience. And I think that just like something just clicked in my head with that of you know, that stories aren't just to be perceived with the brain and the conscious mind. They are to be perceived by the body as well, you know, even more so. I mean, I find it powerful when it's mainly the body that is, you know, receiving the work. And you could just tell through Audre Lorde's writing that she was just so connected to that, you know, that sensory experience, that physical experience. And I just had a really incredible physical, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like receiving that story into my body directly. And it immediately inspired me to then write the next project. It was like, you know, as soon as I had recovered from the breakdown, it was like, right, I know what I need to do now. And I know that I'm no longer just serving myself by writing a story, like I'm serving the reader. That's the priority. It's like a complete flip of, you know, how I'm going into this. It's like, this is how I want the reader to feel. And in order to give them that, I need to get into that feeling myself when I'm writing it. So that's where I'm at now with my own writing.
That's good. Yeah, because I agree with that. Like there is a social and sort of spiritual responsibility, I think, with making art, stories, whatever you want to call it. That does serve a purpose, you know. And it's interesting because when I was a teenager, you know, I was like really sort of kind of lost and looking for answers. You know, it was just like a really traumatic period of time where I just kind of felt like I didn't belong and I didn't feel very connected to anyone or anything, and I, you know, just lost my sense of trust to people in the world. Really, I was really sort of like floating around, you know, like a plastic bag in a tornado, you know.
Oh.
And so I was really trying to search, and I was reading, a very vivacious reader at that point, and I still am.
Voracious.
Voracious, is that the correct word?
I think
to
you mean
use?
voracious.
Voracious. That's what I said.
You said vivacious.
Did I?
I think so.
No,
I'm
voracious.
doubting myself now.
Yeah, I do quite often
Play
stand
the tape
corrected.
back.
You could be right. Could be right. Yeah, I'm dyslexic, so I get things confused, and you know, even things that I've known for a really long time, I confuse. I've actually like begun to. It's one of the reasons that I really love music and like writing abstract form. Is that like instead of like because I don't like this whole right and wrong thing like very much, and I actually have been using my dyslexia and these kind of like weird things that I say and get wrong to my advantage in my songwriting, because I can just use it wrong or whatever. It doesn't matter because it's abstract. It actually adds to it. Like I just finished this piece and I called it The Lion's Voice, right? And lions don't have voices. I can just hear like the teacher or my mum or something correcting it. Like the lions don't have voices. It's like, no, in my piece it's called The Lion's Voice, you know, and I stand by it and I get to choose, right? So
I feel self-conscious now that I've just corrected you.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. No, I do appreciate getting corrected, because it's the worst possible thing if I don't get corrected. It's like having a fucking bogey on your face and no one's saying anything. It's like, what the fuck, can I not trust you to say something? No, I appreciate you saying stuff. Like, I need you to say stuff. Yeah, what was I talking about?
You were a voracious reader.
Oh yeah, when I was a teenager, yeah. So I found Jung's work, and I'm sure like lots of people who are listening are aware of like the Jungian collective unconscious stuff. You know, that is basically that the stories exist first. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently. It's like you know, just reflecting on the kind of things that I'm doing, because, you know, I'm working on some major work at the moment, and it's been kind of an amazing experience. And the more I am able to let go of like the old self, you know, the old sort of like conditioned self or whatever, I'm like enjoying the process way more, because it's just like a lot more sort of like stress free, and you know, it's just I'm just letting it happen more, as opposed to, you know, what you were alluding to earlier when you were saying like I need to know, not knowing is too stressful. You know, I can see that that's totally a left brain thing. It's got nothing to do with the work. Like, you're not even talking about work, you're just talking about your ego trying to hold on to control.
I think I mean more like if I know vaguely where the story is going, that feels to me like an intention that I can then use to like propel me forward. Like if I have the intention of like, well, this is the feeling that I want to leave the reader with, that
Oh
for
yeah,
me
okay.
is can
Yeah,
help
yeah.
me to
That makes
to
sense.
to figure out the path as I'm going, because it's like, okay, I've got that in mind. That's where I'm.
Yeah.
That's the what's the word?
It's like an ethos, like like a doctrine, like a yeah, mission statement,
Yeah, it's like that's the resolution
the
I want to get
intention.
to, and it's not fixed. Like that can change, but it's just helpful for the process for me, I think.
Nice one. Yeah, what more can we give in this discussion that might help people who are listening? Because it's like, you know, again, what's the intention of this? Well, like to help, like to give as much possible like information to you, our listener. Like, because for me, I was searching for this stuff my whole life. So, like, if I was searching for something and I was listening to something, what form would be the most potent for me to get everything that I need? And you know, I think number one is emotion, because like if we don't care, you're not going to care.
Well, it's interesting because we could talk about how we do this podcast, where in the past we've just sat down to talk about whatever, and we've kind of vaguely had a theme, but we've allowed the episode to just sort of, develop in the way that it needs to develop. For this episode, we've come up with a title first, so that's kind of, what I was just saying about having that as like the thing to help you build and help the process as like the intention. So this is kind of a different way actually of us doing the podcast, like coming up with a title first. So it's interesting to see how that's different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sometimes we're just like, oh, we're really angry about this thing, let's just sit in front of the mics and be angry and rant, and
yeah,
that can be fun as well. Sometimes it's like, oh, we're always so serious, let's try and make a funny episode.
yeah.
um,
Different
Different
things.
tones.
Yeah, I find what helps me sitting down to do this stuff is like to just do, you know, because you want to be authentic. So like, you know, I did like watch an interview with Tricky not that long ago, and he's talking about giving advice to the musicians and the singer that he works with, and she was like nervous going on stage this big concert, and he was like, just be nervous, like just go on stage and be vulnerable and nervous if that's how you are. Don't try and be something you're not. Like I thought that was, that's great advice. Yeah. So I, like if don't try and be something you're not. Like if you're feeling vulnerable, like write vulnerably, if that's a word. I don't know if that's a word or not. Is it?
Yeah.
Who knows? Doesn't matter. I'm dyslexic. It's my art. So yeah, just be whatever. Like and like, you know, you just show up and do it, because like, you know, can be really challenging, this podcast, right? Because it's like sometimes I'm in a just terrible mood.
It's difficult, I think, when sitting down in front of the mic, it can be quite intimidating, and I do find a bit of a sort of conditioning in myself to like want to mask, and be a particular way, and I'm often self-conscious about how cynical I am, and it's like, oh, I should be more positive and blah blah blah. And also with like neurodivergence as well, and sometimes my brain, the way my brain is processing things, just finding it hard to like take what's going on inside me and like translate that into a sentence that is, you know, that people can understand. I'm doing it right now. It's like,
no, you're just in your head.
There's something happening where
You're
like,
just in your head because it. Go on, sorry.
What is coming out of my mouth, kind of thing. I've recently been watching a great channel on YouTube, Autism from the Inside, and the host of that has been quite inspirational to me because he's presenting himself in a way that is obviously the intention is to get the message across of whatever it is that he's talking about, but he also just allows himself, especially when he's interviewing people, to just be a bit more vulnerable and authentic and not feel the need to like fill in the gaps in the interview, and you know, not feel the need to sort of coddle whoever he's interviewing. It's just quite an honest representation, I think, of like communication between neurodivergent people that is inspiring to me, as someone who has been masking for so long and is just, you know, in a process of figuring out how and when to unmask and what that looks like and all of that.
Yeah. Because it is an act of discovery doing this stuff. It's not like you don't know, you don't ever know. So it's like just allow for that. That's helpful for me. You know, I like to an extent in the past I've always wanted to like do things from my left brain. You know, there has been some pain that I've caused myself in my life. Like I always used to dream about when I was a teenager being like a drum and bass producer, but it's not who I am, you know, like and I do take bits from that music in my own way, but like when I make music, it's like when I write, it reveals itself and I don't know what it is, and like I don't know where it's going and I don't need to, but all I need to do is to just make sure that I'm authentic when I'm doing it. And I think, you know, lots of people try and imitate other people. That's a great way to learn, but like the true stuff, the true, you know, the bigger like animals at the bottom of the ocean or whatever, you know, that to get that big stuff, if you're interested in that, it takes the bravery to allow for that to become in a way by itself. Excuse me. And it is like the experience of something coming into manifestation, and it's like you're collaborating with the universe. Like it is a collaboration with the universe. Everything that you do on your own is and with others, there's always that collaborator of the universe, and it's like, so it's always a participation in a process. It's never like you are making something. Like I never really feel like I have made that. I feel like I've put myself into a ritual, daily ritual of like manifestation, of like being open, like allowing my heart to open up, allowing my mind to open to receive things, and you know that those things are coming from another place. This is my experience, this is the way I think about it. So really it's a collaboration, and you're allowing something to be brought forward that wants to be brought forward, that exists already, you know, that has always been there, you know, like Mr. Torrance, you know, you've always been the caretaker here, you know, or like the ending of Twin Peaks, like we're in a parallel dimension and we're going to the start, but is it the start? It's like the Twin Peaks house at the end of that season 3 has always been there, right? And it always will be there in multiple dimensions. So I think we are bringing it into this dimension, you know, we're willing it in to this dimension, but it is something there. And so this is the experience. So it's like, it's okay not to know because it knows. You know, that's helped me quite a lot. It might sound really super abstract, but it knows what it is. And I think through our sense of emotion and feeling about something, it's like you have a feeling about something, you know, it's your right brain, it's your body, like you were saying, the somatic experience when you read Audre Lorde. It's like we have a feeling about that something, and we can feel whether something is right for that or wrong for that. You know, you can feel it, and we're all really super hypersensitive to that. And when we see a story or we watch a film or we listen to something, we can hear where it goes wrong, and we can see where the story goes wrong. You know, that character wouldn't do that. Like, that isn't who that person is. It's like that person, that character has a life. It has an authentic life in reality, and there are things that character will and won't do. There are things that make sense to that character and do not make sense to that character, and we can feel when it's off. And if a film is off too much, we can't sit and enjoy it. It's like it takes the creator to be that sensitivity of feeling. You know, this feels correct, this feels incorrect, and that is the process of this, as far as I can experience it, is that I'm feeling this sound is correct, this sound is incorrect, this section is correct, this section is incorrect, it needs to go here, it feels like it needs to go here, and it's not. I need to make, so it's like, you know, that's the guidance system in order to will the thing in collaboration with the energy of the universe into a talisman, you know, like a structure, a form, you know, a solid, whatever you want to call it, material, a vibration, you know. So I think that there is some feeling of like being able to relax into that, because it's not all about me, David, how great am I. It's like, no, I'm just a conduit. I'm just a step between worlds that is able to participate in a process of creation.